Shadowverse.
Greetings, I'm Shad, and this is going to be another reply video, specifically to the video from the YouTube channel Weird History, entitled Ways Medieval Armor Was More Dangerous Than Wearing Nothing. Now, if you're familiar at all with medieval history and armor, you might react with some concern, skepticism, front offense at such a title. There is an obvious kind of logic that debunks such a concept right away. And if medieval armor did not protect you more than wearing nothing, no one would have worn it. Now, it's not to say it doesn't come with certain armor difficulties, extra weight, fatigue, everything, but overall, history has proven that the benefits vastly outweigh any hindrance that the armor might provide. And we're talking about most types of medieval armor and the ones that were engineered, made, constructed to be more easily worn and so on. Now, this actually isn't the first reply video I've done to Weird History. In fact, this YouTube channel is responsible for me launching my Medieval Misconceptions playlist. The first video I did was actually a shadow response to theirs on, it was called What Life Was Like in Medieval Castles. I didn't mention specifically it was that video because it's not my intention to try and attack, a YouTube channel. I do admit that my interaction with this channel hasn't encouraged me to watch more of their content for how much I've noticed them getting wrong. And this video now that I'm replying to only came onto the radar because someone sent it to me saying, Shad, you might want to correct some of the stuff here. I have a philosophy that the idea that when some people get some facts really wrong on a certain subject, that they should take the video down or stop making content like that, I largely disagree with, because I find it can be a springboard for people to learn the correct information. For instance, right now, I wouldn't be making this reply video if they didn't make theirs, and I'm not sure, so we're going to be able to address some interesting information that maybe I never would have gotten to, and the people who watch that video might not find their way to the correct information because it's a different audience, and so as a result, I do feel if we can respond to it, correct the information, it can still lead to a net benefit, and I encourage them to keep trying to improve, fix what they're doing. It does seem, though, that when it comes to medieval subjects, they have a bit of trouble on the matter. So we shall dive right in.
We're going to take a look at several ways medieval armor was more dangerous than just wearing nothing.
So in all the things that they bring up, I suspect that they're going to, this gentleman or the crew, the people that work behind on this YouTube channel, I don't know how many people worked on the research or the script or anything, they might be able to bring up certain ways in which armor could be a little bit constricting, certain inherent problems, but the context that all these problems are being raised in is not that armor can create certain difficulties, it's that these difficulties were so significant that there were ways in which it was then worse than just wearing nothing at all. That's the premise it's going by. By the way, this subject, they're not the first ones to do this, Weird History. Metatron has done like a reply to some article saying that armor was worse than wearing nothing as well. So now I guess it's my turn addressing a different video, but it's one of those it's a misconception that actually comes up more than just once. I wonder if, I don't know, Weird History does seem to be a type of chat, just from what I've seen in terms of the videos I've addressed, especially the Life in Medieval Castle one. They hear like these little factoids and jump on it because that's a bit weird, and then they perpetuate it and they over-exaggerate it, like medieval people only drinking ale and they just didn't drink water, which is utterly absurd.
Well, the medieval era ain't exactly their specialty. They have a video here called What Really Happened Behind the Scenes of Pimp My Ride. Yeah, that's historical.
I wonder if this is one of the problems of when a information channel goes too broad and doesn't have the depth of research to specialize on a subject, which is why they can get so much wrong. Because there's a lot of nuance in a lot of things that I'm going to be trying to clarify in what they say in this video.
By about 1420 CE, Europeans had created the earliest full-body suits of armor. And by the 15th and 16th centuries, every European army was built with suits of armor.
1420 is the 5th century.
Oh, yeah.
He says that they had full things in 1420, and then by the 5th century...
And by the 15th and 16th centuries, every Europe...
So,
later that same time period. And then he goes on to say...
Full-body suits of armor. And by the 15th and 16th centuries, every European army was built around plate-armored soldiers.
Every European army was
true.
built around plate-armored soldiers. And this is, again, about stating something so broadly. There's like... No.
Even from my cursory understanding of listening to you, right? The foot soldiers, the common foot soldiers, were more likely wearing gambeson and... Steel was expensive.
It was expensive. You're right. And it's the idea that it's built around the concept of plate armor. They didn't build armies around, the plated armored individuals. They built around strategy, unit types, formations and stuff. And so the English were famous for their longbowmen and things. And so if they were going to set up a battlefield, they might build it around that strategy with the longbowman in the center. Then you need infantry to back it up. You might want cavalry to handle flanking things.
It's like saying the modern day military is based around tanks.
No, it's not. But there might be certain fields of warfare that
Need it.
Yeah, and that the strategy is built around the implementation of tanks. But he says it so categorically. He said all European armies were built around plate armor. He could have said plate armor was employed to a vastly greater degree in the late 15th century and 16th century. That would be a more accurate statement, but it's poorly worded and it gives the wrong idea.
The fullest sets of armor tended to be made for jousting rather than warfare.
That's not true at all either.
No, it's not.
What was this area?
It depends what they say by the more full suits of armor. Jousting armor was heavier, and they had pretty solid frog mouth helmets and things, but they didn't cover more of the body than a full suit of plate armor around the 15th century.
These guys have 3.5 million subscribers.
Yeah, that castle video? Nearly everything in that video is wrong about what was life like in a medieval castle. That has 4 million views. My shadow response, which I didn't I was like, this is a response to this channel. I'm doing it now because it's the second time. But at least my response has 1 million views. But, it can only do so much.
That was the glamour armor.
Not always. You're on show, at a joust, but if you just had a good suit of armor that did the job effectively, and that's all you could afford, that's what you used to perpetuate that every single suit of armor that was used in jousting was glamour and stuff, and might not at least the armor in this scene of Game of Thrones was a decent enough suit of armor, right? So maybe I can give him a pass for using a shot of a fantasy. But honestly, some of the historical movies that they also use clips on are probably worse than Game of Thrones for accuracy in terms of equipment and depiction of a medieval setting.
This period represented the height of full-body plate armor being used in warfare. The reason we associate
Gosh. Sorry, he's got a image from the last duel with the half helmets. It's sorry. As a historical kind of trying to share facts and stuff about things, it's an atrocity to show a clip of that helmet as a depiction of what armor might have looked like in historical periods.
It's like the president wearing half a bulletproof vest and showing you which half it is.
Oh, it's so bad. So it's funny how that was the very next clip that they used after I said that some of the depictions in historical, based films are worse than Game of Thrones. I never saw a helmet like that in Game of Thrones. That's all I'm saying. So dumb. Oh my goodness. It's like, we have to see the actor's face, but in a duel, they're always going to wear helmets, but we have to see the actor's face. We'll compromise in half. No, it's like, one or the other. Like, as bad as wearing no helmet in going to warfare, to me, that's not as an atrocity as the half helmet thing.
The reason we associate knights with armor today has more to do with specialized jousting armor developed for tournaments in the 16th century.
What the hell? What was that? I'm sorry, like, he's still just like, we associate knights in armor more because of he's basically implying that they really wore the main covering armor in jousting and not on the battlefield, and that's why we associate knights in armor. It's like, they wore plate armor on the battlefield a lot. Quite a lot. We have artistic evidence for it. We have archaeological evidence for it. Oh my goodness. I can't remember the exact battlefield. Maybe I'll bring it up. But we found heaps of early types of brigandines on this battle site. And, oh my goodness.
Wearing a blocky jousting suit wouldn't have made much sense in a battle.
So, yeah, jousting armor could be significantly heavier than the full plate that was worn on the battlefield. But remember what he said previously is that, let me rewind it.
The fullest sets of armor tended to be made for jousting.
He said the fullest sets of armor tended to be made for jousting. No, there were sets of armor that encased the whole body, for the battlefield as well. What the misconception they're perpetuating here is that wearing a full suit of armor that covered most of the body would be too bulky and blocky to wear on the battlefield. That's the actual implication of these statements, which is utterly wrong. If they were heaviest jousting, but they're not talking, he didn't even say jousting armor was heavy. He's talking about the misconception of belief that jousting armor covered more fully the body, but no medieval battlefield armor also fully covered the body in many instances. Not everyone, of course. There were different levels, different combinations.
Because your movement and vision would be extremely limited. Again, remember the context of these statements. He's not referring to weight here. They're playing on the misconception that they cover most of the body. And then he has extrapolated that to mean you wouldn't be able to move very well and you wouldn't be able to see very well. And because of that, the battlefield sets of armor did not cover most of which is wrong. It's just utterly wrong. A jousting suit wouldn't have made much sense in a battle because your movement and vision would be extremely limited, but it worked fine for a skirmish against your fellow knights.
Oh, what is he trying to, interpreting what he's saying here is that full suits of armor worked fine in skirmishes, but not on in a battlefield. That's essentially what he's saying, which is also wrong.
But while a plate metal bodysuit would shield soldiers from many types of battlefield damage, it far from made them invincible, and created many more problems than it solved.
Okay. You're on the right way, and then you just went off rails, all right? So the first part,
battlefield damage.
Yeah, it didn't make you wholly invincible. That's true. But then that it could create vastly more problems than it solved is utter bullcrap. And created many more problems. Just not more, many more. Like the vast majority, it just caused more problems than it solved. Then why were they wearing it?
This video creates problems.
Oh, yeah. You could roast alive from the heat. Oh boy.
Many of the combatants were fighting each other in the desert while wearing heavy metal suits. At this point, you may be thinking something like, hey, won't applying intense heat to a metal container just cook whatever's inside it? Good question.
Cook whatever's inside it.
At least they don't have to bring pots.
Yeah, cook whatever's inside it. So, okay.
And the answer is yes. Soldiers were literally baked inside their armor.
They said literally. Can we just play a game called Common Sense? Let's just try and throw this out there. If I am a knight and my armor is getting so hot that it will bake me alive, what would I do? Die or take the armor off? Just throwing that out there. Clearly people would just die, yeah, obviously. No, they'd
People are not retarded.
I don't know, Shad Knights and their dress code, chivalry, and they were stylish.
Look, people got heat stroke wearing armor.
And many eventually perished from heat exhaustion.
And many they perished from heat exhaustion, but he literally said they literally got baked alive. See, I use the correct form of literally when referring to what the narrator said, because that's what he literally said. Because literally means...
Literally?
Literally.
Wait, really?
Yes. Literally means literally.
They discovered ways to get around the heat. Some took their armor off entirely when it became too warm.
Some. All right. I'm glad there's some nuance being added. But all right. Will he clarify that those who were not able to take off their armor did it because they were in a situation where they didn't have the opportunity, not because they were so stupid that they was just like, just let myself die. There will be another caveat to that I'll also add. Sometimes you can suffer from dehydration and heat stroke with actually not being aware of it.
That was obviously the most effective solution, but could leave one vulnerable if fighting broke out. Others discovered that covering up armor with cloth prevented direct sunlight from heating the metal up to the cooking point. Of course, now they were wearing a heavy metal suit and a jacket in the blazing desert heat.
So that he's implying that this is compounding and would make it worse, when no, the surcoats that they wore prevented the metal from heating up to the degree it could. And so it wouldn't increase like a stacking layer. No, it'd actually keep it cooler than what it could reach.
Not exactly the time or place to layer up. Or...
So he's basically saying here that it was dumb that they wore surcoats over mail. It's not the greatest place to layer up. It's like, no, this was a good thing that they did. It actively prevented the armor from heating up to the level it could. And because if this was the case, if it was more detrimental to layer like a surcoat over on top of armor in heat like this, no one would have done it. This is like a modern person saying, look at these idiots layering it up in heat. They don't know what there's...
Or is hell, man?
And he ends it there. It's like, he's basically implying, but they were stupid for layering it up because it's in hot air. It's like,
I'd take my chances with heat stroke rather than, I don't know, an axe to the head.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of that, but there's a big difference between heat stroke and being baked alive.
Yeah.
Look, is this just like casual use of language? But he said literally, that's where I'm... Maybe he didn't say literally, I could have let him slide as just being hyperbolic.
But he's got his terminology wrong too.
You could get stabbed in between the plates. Therefore, it was pointless wearing it.
In its heyday, plated armor made a soldier about as close to invincible as they could ever get.
Then read the title of the video.
Yeah, I know. That's right. How could he say that statement with the very premise of this video? But in many ways, it was more dangerous than wearing nothing. Near invincible. Ways worse than wearing nothing. Okay.
Invincible as they could ever get. Sword slashes did absolutely nothing to it.
Yeah, in most cases. If you had a heavy enough sword, right, and you got a really solid hit to the head, there is a level of blunt force you could pass through it. Okay, it needs to be a big, weighty sword to do something like that. But for the most part, yeah, sword slashes are pretty ineffective against metal armor. Slashes could get through gambeson, though, but, you know. Well, that's the thing. The video title is just medieval armor. It's not medieval plate. Most of the things he's talking about is only in reference to steel armor. Metal armor. And so, again, it's almost perpetuating that there were not other types of armor, like cloth armor, gambesons, padded jacks, and the like.
Which meant fighters had to get very clever to get their cuts in. The trick to defeating an opponent in plated armor was knowing that the armor didn't truly cover everything.
The trick, not one of the tricks. Again, it's about being precise with your wording, because this is implying this is the only way to get through heavy armor. And
is he going to mention hammers?
Yeah, like blunt force.
Even what do you call it? The Battle of Agincourt. They were overwhelmed by arrows, even though they're wearing full plate armor.
We'll get to Agincourt. There's more nuance about that because people look. The arrows were decisive, but they overplay it, all right? Most of the French knights were actually defeated in melee after the arrow storm at point blank. The arrows more so helped stall the charge. Well, the boggy terrain more helped stall the charge. The arrows helped take out the cavalry, like the horses a lot, then take out a number of knights. But there was a lot of melee fighting after that the archers jumped in on there as well. But the English knights on foot had a massive role. Like there was a big fight that happened after the use of the archery. So yeah, Agincourt is a nuanced thing. But going back to what I was saying, like the other way to defeat people in armor was just to hit them with something big and heavy, and preferably in the head, where, like, doesn't matter how much armor you have on it, if you can accelerate that skull enough where the brain ricochets on the inside of the skull, doesn't matter what metal you hit first, they will drop.
Even a big enough stick.
A club, yeah, where you got art of medieval of armored individuals being defeated by sticks.
Stick good.
Sticks very good. So. Again, like, will they mention that so far they're only framing it in the context that the only way to defeat someone in armor was hit him in between the gaps? It's like, it's not the only way.
There were gaps that one could exploit near the groin, in the neck, and under the armpits.
Yeah, those are all behind the knees as well, and also just in between plates.
And under the armpits.
No, it doesn't say isolates.
Seems like you want extra armor in a few of those places.
Oh! This is again what like a modern person saying, look how stupid these people, there's such an obvious solution. Just put armor in the vulnerable plates. Yeah, you think no one in the medieval period tried that or thought of that? One of the reasons why you wouldn't, it would prevent movement. And sometimes, guess what? They did. They had like these really interesting inside pieces that accompanied the shoulder piece that would enable you to bend your arm. I actually don't know the name of the inside piece, but it usually accompanied the elbow cop or cubitiere. I think I'm bad pronunciation, but that helped protect. There were openings, but they did try and add things to protect those opening parts. But the idea that this narrator saying, yeah, you just cover the whole thing, well, then they wouldn't be able to move. Looked up, I think it's the couture. And also they had the bessigue, which are these round metal discs that would kind of stay in place when you raised your arm to help block strikes that went at the armpit. Now, in later, like really, this is Henry V, I believe, had some armors that even had folding, articulated sections that fully encase the under armpit and stuff. But technology didn't develop to that point. And so it's really annoying where someone of a modern mindset with more modern technology is like, oh, you could have just made something to cover. It's like they had their limitations of their time, but they were aware of the weaknesses and they implemented ways to try and protect those parts. But this just really feels like modern day elitism. It's like, look at this problem. It could have been easily solved. Really? Go back into the medieval period with that medieval technology and the resources they had available. See what you could do.
Given this particular weakness, resourceful fighters would grapple their opponents and then try to stab at those weak points with daggers.
Yeah, common way to defeat someone in armor was, to do that. Knock them, because in some cases, armor was so protective. Most efficient way, knock them off their feet.
If you're the guy wearing the armor, that would often mean taking a dagger in an extremely inopportune place, like the neck, the groin, or even through the eye slit.
Thank you, he mentions eye slits.
Whichever it turned out to be, the one thing that was for sure was that it would be an exceptionally...
This side from the King, I didn't like the King. I liked the Outlaw King. The King had a lot of problems. I have a review on the channel. But at least this fight was half decent. It wasn't terrible, the clip that is using here.
Painful and...
You expend twice the amount of energy to move around. Depends on the weight of armor, but that doesn't mean no one would use it. All right, the benefits still vastly outweigh the negatives. I'm wearing a metal brigandine. This is actual armor, okay? And I've moved around in it. It exhausts me a lot quicker. In my experience, is it twice as difficult? I don't think it's twice. Maybe 30%?
The context is different. These people trained their entire lives to...
You're right. There was actual, depending on region and stuff, we have accounts of saying a knight should train this much and everything, be able to do this in armor. It obviously didn't apply universally, but it's an example of the standards that generally was expected of people being able to wear armor. And some of the things are being able to climb ladders, run, and you'd be able to jump and other things like that.
Roll from Dark Souls.
So you're right. With intense physical conditioning and training, it will get to the point where the armor did not impede you very much at all in combat. You could maintain high levels of mobility and fight for extended periods of time before exhaustion because you would get really fit by constant training. These guys were athletes. They're not regular Joes like me.
But you might be surprised by just how much mobility some of the knights
Good,
had.
thank you,
They could
okay.
actually run and jump surprisingly well.
Run and jump,
Or
yes.
they can with legs.
Thank you, all right. I'm glad they...
Said the plates were still an encumbrance. While you did have a decent amount of mobility in a suit of armor, that didn't mean you could just sprint around on the battlefield swinging your sword like a larper in a cardboard costume.
The necessity for sprinting doesn't happen as often as you might think, but they certainly could. Okay, and so I don't know. It's not essentially saying it is saying they couldn't sprint as much as a larper, but even that one, there's nuance to be said.
I feel like larpers wouldn't be fit enough to sprint.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. Like a lot of larpers, they're not that fit. Some are real. Look, some are athletes, right? But some are not, and so yeah.
In fact, a full suit of armor could weigh up to 100 pounds or more.
What? Jousting armor, maybe. So yeah, average armor is between 45 and 55 pounds, 20 to 25 kilos, right? That's lighter than the standard pack that like a modern day army soldier wears. And the benefit is that medieval armor is distributed over the whole body. It's not just resting on the waist or the shoulders and everything. So these 20 to 25 kilos, a lot of it is strapped to the legs and is not just pulling down the shoulders and stuff, and that's why they could maintain high mobility. Jousting armor could reach up to 50 kilos, which is twice as heavy as standard, battlefield armor with 20 to 25 kilos. But there's no distinction there. He literally just says armor flat. Like, listen.
Costume. In fact, a full suit of armor could weigh up to 100 pounds or more.
Up to. Or more.
Or more.
That's a very broad...
No, like... I can't believe this misconception is still being said by people. This is not an old video. It was made in February of 2022, this year, right? That's only like a week or so old.
5 days.
Yeah, 5 days, right? I'm just stunned that they still like, oh my goodness. Who fact-checked this? Like, you look it up. Let's look this up. Weight of armor. I'm just going to go... medieval armor weight. The Google answer, the very first top, not even going to Wikipedia, gives you the correct answer. A full suit of armor weighed from 20 to 25 kilograms, 45 to 55 pounds, less than modern infantrymen would, so less than a modern infantryman would carry in equipment. They give you the right answer. Could they not even friggin' Google this? Oh my goodness. That's pathetic. I'm sorry. That's really bad. And they might say, oh, but armor could reach up to that. They're speaking in the context of the battlefield armor that you would wear. And no, battlefield armor did not go that heavy, all right? Maybe there was the tiniest, but no, more standard broad, 20, 25, sometimes like this, brigandine, what I'm wearing, it's only like 12 kilos, all right? And so... But they're talking about full suits of armor. Full suits of armor, 20 to 25 kilos. And they don't make the distinction.
That's not counting the rest of the typical gear a soldier might have to carry around with him. Like for
That clarifies that in the context of this video, they're talking about battlefield armor, not jousting. A regular soldier would...
As you can imagine, donning a bulky pile of metal to swing a smaller, pointier piece of metal at your foes could get pretty tiring pretty quickly.
Look, you would tire quicker wearing armor than not, okay? But for a conditioned, trained person, I reckon like a medieval knight would be able to fight longer wearing armor, way longer than I would be able to fight
not wearing armor, just wearing my normal clothes. The difference in fitness would be like striking.
It meant you often found yourself facing opponents who were potentially far less exhausted than you were.
Hang on. It meant you often found yourself fighting opponents who are far less exhausted than yourself. What utter bullcrap. Because the context you're saying here is that an armored person would often find themselves fighting less or no armored people who are less exhausted than themselves. Even though on a battlefield they would walk into to the engagement more often. Now, one of the ways to defeat an armed opponent is to get them exhausted, all right? There are times when people but even if two people wearing armor, the more fit person who doesn't get exhausted can win and just exhaust the other person. The armor is not necessarily the key distinguishing thing. And on top of that, even if you're a bit more exhausted because you're wearing armor and you're fighting a person who has a bit more energy, okay, that a combat engagement can happen really quickly, between 1 to 5 exchanges of blows. And if there's got a shield, that can extend further, especially if they're fighting defensively. But if they're committed, it can happen really, really quickly. And because of that, even if you're only slightly, a bit more exhausted than the other person, it'll happen really quickly, and the advantage you have in your armor versus someone who is not as exhausted, not wearing armor, still gives you way more benefit than the exchange. But because of the context of this video, they're implying that in some instances it's better not to wear the armor at all because you might be just a little bit more exhausted, which means you'll lose. No. The benefit of the armor still gives you a massive edge over someone not wearing armor who might not tire as quickly. Otherwise, no one would have friggin' worn armor.
Than you were. Thanks to contemporary reenactors, historians estimate that running in 15th century chainmail armor required twice the amount of energy than running without it.
Look, I haven't done the test. I'm dubious of that, specifically because modern day reenactors are different to medieval trained warriors who are athletes, and so I'm very dubious about that statement, honestly.
It's different materials, different food, different training, different lifestyle. It's completely different.
Yeah.
It's not
And I'm sorry, there's a lot of... when I say a lot, when I see reenactors, most of reenactors are regular Joes who, they love the period, everything like that, but most of them aren't athletes, okay? See a lot of them that are a bit overweight like me. And so then to try and make a baseline that, they will tire just as quickly wearing medieval armor, comparing modern people to the ones trained for it, it's a false... Is it a false equivalent? It's just wrong. Now, of course, you will tire quicker wearing armor than not, but there's so much more nuance into that discussion than just saying, you'll tire just as quickly, twice as quick.
Picture trying to run an obstacle course with a full-size man riding on your back, like Yoda.
We don't need to picture that. We can picture someone, a modern, there's a difference between just an average reenactor and people. There's I forget his name, but there's a guy who actually trains in his armor. He does rock climbing, he rolls in it, and there's even a video of him doing an obstacle course, right? And so he's an athlete who's conditioned himself to wear his armor really effectively. And so we don't need to picture Yoda on an obstacle course. We can watch this guy. There's a video of him in an obstacle course against a soldier wearing their full kit and a fireman wearing his full kit, okay? Comparing the two. He doesn't win, but he beats one of the other guys. He comes right in the middle, this guy wearing armor.
Yeah, and even then, it's not on the back. It's distributed all over the body.
Exactly. And we have seen that obstacle course, and he performs really good.
That's kind of what fighting in a suit of armor was like. Nowhere was that more consequential than in the Battle of Agincourt. The Battle of Agincourt was
Let's talk about the Battle of Agincourt then, shall we?
In real life, the French lost due to factors that were less than poetic and more logistical. One
Okay, yes.
of those factors was the weather. It had rained for 2 straight weeks beforehand, turning the ground into a field of mud. Marching through that churned dirt in 100 pounds of armor sapped a lot of the French troops' strength. Before they even reached the fight. Well, that doesn't...
2 straight weeks beforehand. The English weren't waiting on the field of Agincourt for those 2 weeks. They were marching too. And the English were actually far more exhausted and weary from their whole, a landed in Harfleur, they sieged Harfleur, and then there was skirmishing that happened and maneuvering, and a lot of these French troops were actually far more fresh than the English. The English were suffering from dysentery and all this crap. A lot of things went wrong for the English, but referencing that it was raining for 2 weeks beforehand, and that particularly impacted the French more than the English, not to get there, no, I disagree with that. But in terms of its impact on the battle, the soggy, now muddy ground, it had an impact, but people often misinterpret and get something really wrong with it. And let's see what he says here.
Ground into a field of mud. Marching through that churned dirt in 100 pounds of armor sapped a lot of the fresh.
So, when an army marches, everyone's marching wearing all their armor. That's what he's saying. And that if you had full plate, you'd be marching in your full plate. No. No. Look, sometimes they wear some of their armor. There are cases where they would wear their armor. But if you know that the engagement is happening right away, you would travel not wearing your armor. That's anyway.
French troops' strength before they even reached the fight. While that doesn't make Henry's speech any less inspiring, the English had a bit more of an advantage than old Hank let on.
Lances and arrows could pierce even the strongest armor. Because arrows and lances had a chance to pierce certain types of armor could just be instantly defeated. Just use arrows and lances. It's like, no. Armor could protect you, especially well-made. The strongest of armor could protect you really well against arrow fire.
One of the deadliest weapons of medieval combat was the trusty old bow and arrow.
Yes, agree. Depends on the type of bow, but without needing to specify.
While it's true that armor could protect its wearer from arrows, it hardly made you immune from them.
Oh, yes, fair statement.
First and foremost, distance was a huge factor.
Good point of nuance to bring up. Good.
From a long distance, arrows wouldn't do too much. But at a closer range...
From a longer distance, arrows wouldn't do too much. Do too much, again, be specific. Too much against people wearing armor? And that depends. Are the horses armored? Okay. Now, conventional interpretations of the Battle of Agincourt from multiple historians believe that the English shot more horizontally at closer range against the French cavalry. I tend to feel that interpretation go too far to say that longer volleys wouldn't. Some even say not use at all. I think there's definite military wisdom and benefit in using longer range arrow fire. That's what we even have examples of medieval history of warbows outranging crossbows. And so that meant they were shooting at range. The Battle of Crécy I'm referencing in particular because there was one engagement in Battle of Crécy where the French crossbowmen went to engage the English, and someone left all their pavises on the supply carts, and they weren't distributed to the crossbowmen, and so they were just set onto the battlefield without their pavesi, as the Italian correct pronunciation is, I believe. But I'll just say pavises because I'm an uncultured Englishman. I technically am. We're in Australia. We're part of the Crown. It's honorary English, isn't it?
We're prisoners, okay?
Okay, but even their prisoners, technically, part of the Commonwealth. Anyway, I'll say Pavis. They didn't have it, all right? And so these crossbowmen just were ordered to just try and take on the English at an advantage of elevation. And so they had the longbowmen on this hill, and the longbowmen specifically outranged the crossbowmen, which meant range was an important factor, and they did shoot at range, in arrow warfare. And when the crossbowmen started to retreat because they were just getting decimated because they couldn't hit the English, but the English could hit them, one of the French leaders ordered the retreating crossbowmen to be killed for cowardice. The French made some really dumb moves in warfare, but ultimately they did win the 100 Years' War. So, sometimes we can focus too much on the English victories in the 100 Years' War, but the French had some very decisive victories in the 100 Years' War as well. But in terms of Crécy and Agincourt, they goofed. They were some big goofs. And
And yeah, so anyway, going back to the thing, like, of course, archery was used at longer ranges as well. And we don't want the pendulum to swing too far to say that there was always horizontal at close range. Horizontal at close range gives you much higher chances for armor penetration. And as I mentioned, that's what we believe they did at Agincourt. But let's not exclude the other uses of longer range archery.
Arrows designed to pierce armor could smash right through.
Not always. Depends on the type of armor and the type of shot.
From a long distance, arrows wouldn't do too much.
They will never do too much at a long distance. Tell that to the, unawares unit of troops that don't have their armor on, or just arrows volleyed over on top of them. That won't do much. You'll be fine.
But at a closer range, arrows designed to pierce armor could smash right through.
It could, not always.
The advent of the English longbow was an especially dangerous development.
Here's a earth-shattering reality to some people, especially even medieval enthusiasts are unaware of this. The longbow was not particularly high poundage than many other warbows of the period. Okay, look. If you don't like that statement, I've got a whole video explaining the depth and the reasons why and the evidence and stuff. There were short bows, recurves that could reach as high poundage. All right, and the longbow. The English didn't invent the longbow. The longbow has been around it's a very old weapon, all right? It's just a bow that's really big and long.
Nah, British people invented the bow.
So everyone thinks that the English invented the longbow, which they didn't, and the longbow that they invented, which they didn't, was stronger than any other bow ever used. No.
The arrow could cut through anything.
What the English did, which was not wholly unique to the English, but in this period is more represented by the English, turned archery into a type of culture where they were able to train up a larger body of men that could handle higher draw weight bows than other armies. It's very likely that other armies had a couple of soldiers that could shoot the highest poundage. We're talking between 150 pounds to even up to 200 pounds. And 200 pounds seems to be one of the highest benchmarks, very rare, but that's one of the highest benchmarks that people could reach in shooting, okay? It's very likely that there were many people in the past who were going to war, trained up, got crazy good, and could shoot warbows at that range. Having an army where the larger majority of people, the men in it, could shoot 120 pounds up, right? That's the exception. And that's the big achievement of the English. It was the archers, not necessarily the bow. The bow helped facilitate it, but when you needed a war bow, like a really good, solid, powerful war bow, one of the most affordable, accessible bows that you could build to reach those poundages was the longbow. The longbow is basically the AK-47 of the medieval period. It's not necessarily the best. It's actually unique problems and detriments with the longbow, yes. Shocking, it's not the greatest bow in the world, but in terms of affordability, ease of access, and also reliability, consistency, it was a great bow. It's actually one of the best in those ranges. Affordability, consistency, and reliability. One of the best bows you can find in the warbow ranges, in the high poundage ranges. The longbow is great, but it's not the most powerful bow, and it's not the easiest to shoot or most accurate or anything like that. There's actually problems with it. So many people misunderstand it, and this video is just another one of those things. It's the English longbow. No, there were other, you can get short bows as high poundage. It was the English archers specifically that most of them could shoot such heavy poundages. That's the key. Okay, that's what gave them the edge, and they achieved that by the culture of the time. You know, like English men between ages, 16 and I forget the higher end, practicing archery on Sundays, but also they promoted it as the more honourable pastime, like stop doing frivolous things like other sports, do archery, the manly thing. They promoted it, and through that culture, they were able to get large groups, armies of just really good archers that could shoot high poundages. That's how they could outrange. It wasn't because of the bow. They could have used other bows and achieved the same thing. Other war bows of equal or higher poundage. It was the archers that were the harder thing to get.
As it had stronger power and longer range.
No, it didn't. So again, that's a misconception. Short bows of equivalent poundage if their recurve will usually perform better than longbows of the same poundage. You compare a 100-pound shortbow, recurve shortbow, to a 100-pound longbow, the shortbow will usually perform better and shoot faster. If you want to know the reasons why, there's actual reasons going into your engineering and the laws of physics reasons that I explained in this video that explain why, okay? It's just another perpetuating myth to say a longbow can shoot further and more powerful. No, it's wrong.
These bows...
And by the way, I freaking love the longbow, all right? But I want to understand the things I love. And I'm not going to be a fanboy and just attribute too much things that are untrue to it, all right?
were overly dangerous development, as it had strong...
And they're saying it's all like a current development, like it was just invented. That longbow didn't exist for thousands of years beforehand.
longer power and longer range.
More power, longer.
These bows were over 6 feet long, and in the right hands, they were capable of killing a target 200 yards away. They also drastically reduced reload time. A skilled...
Drastically reduced reload time. In the context that they're saying is like, they're perpetuating the myth that this was a recent development. The English invented the longbow, and because of that, they drastically reduced reload time. It's like people couldn't shoot as fast with other bows of earlier times, even though longbows existed earlier and they just couldn't shoot as fast.
Longbowmen could fire half a dozen arrows. In the same time, a crossbowman could fire a single bolt.
Yes, I mean, it depends. Sometimes they can shoot more, sometimes they can shoot less.
Speaking of the cavalry, a strategic cavalry charge could often be the deciding factor in a fight, even against combatants decked out in full plate armor.
So, I mean, it depends about the cavalry charge. Like, if the cavalry charge is charging a enemy formation that isn't too deep, and there's a chance that the cavalry could break through the formation, regroup, and charge again, yeah, that could be devastating. But if they charge into a large, deeper unit formation, and they just get surrounded by enemies that are just cut them to pieces, cavalry charge can be the worst choice around.
One reason for this is that horses could deliver an incredibly powerful blow to virtually any defensive formation.
Virtually, no. See, I already clarified that. It depends on the formation, mate. And also, it depends on what they're using. If they have spears, pikes, cavalry charge against that could be the worst thing ever. I mean, look at the schiltron that the Scottish use, all right? They use that to repel cavalry in many instances. Like a cavalry charge could be great against virtually any formation. No, it's just wrong.
But more pointedly, the riders carried lances, which were long poles with...
Not always. The riders, again, specificity of language. The riders carried lances, which is implying all of them. Not always.
Incredibly sharp metal tips, specially designed to pierce armor. And they were incredibly effective.
They could be incredibly effective, but there was ways to counter them and just render them utterly useless.
The power of a galloping horse behind it, the lance could punch a hole through Robocop.
We would need to test that against Robocop. Look, a lance has a good chance of punching through armor. Not always, though. To say it's always the case...
Let alone any knights on the battlefield. Along with the lance, other weapons designed to take advantage of the weak points in suits of armor included the long-tapered sword, halberds...
Look... Long-tapered sword wouldn't be your first pick for a battlefield weapon to combat armor. These other choices are better, like, halberd, poleaxe. Yeah. You couldn't see well. So then, first of all, what type of helmet are you talking about? I mean, there's a lot of open-faced helmets, okay? If you had a sallet without the bevel, it still had a visor. Raise the visor, you could see pretty darn well. I mean, there was lots of visored helmets that you could that just lift up. Oh, there's the enemy. Then lower it. Now, with a full faced helmet, yes, it does restrict sight, but let's see if he clarifies that some helmets this wasn't an issue at all, because they're proposing that because you couldn't see well, this justifies the title of this video, why medieval armor was more dangerous than wearing nothing.
The helmets that completed a suit of armor were incredibly adept at protecting one's head.
The helmets that completed a suit of armor were incredibly adept at protecting, right? And the pictures they show were full-face helmets. But you could wear a full suit of armor and not have a full-face helmet. Like a sallet without a bevel, all right? Well, what about a barboot? Barboot is an awesome helmet. I love that thing, all right?
wider, place like, opening for the eyes. You can see much better. You have kettle helmets, okay, as well. I mean, there are heaps of helmets.
Unfortunately, that protection came at the price of completely eliminating your peripheral vision.
They're just going on the assumption that the helmets that you'd wear with full plate armor always covered the eyes. And then the ones that did cover the eyes, like I mentioned before, oftentimes had visors so you could raise it, get better vision, and then close it when you're going straight for the fight. Now, look, I'm not saying that full covering helmets didn't restrict your vision. It did. But they're saying it as an absolute universal on all plate armor, or just, they're not even really specifying plate, are they? Yeah.
Sort of like how a diving mask lets you see underwater, but only the sharks directly in front of you. In the midst of combat, it could be pretty easy to get taken out by an attacker creeping up behind you, before you even knew they were there.
That could happen to people not wearing armor as well.
Yeah, thing is though, you're surrounded on all sides except in front of you by your comrades, unless the lines are completely broken and...
Well, let's see.
Luckily for those wearing the helmets, this didn't happen too often, due to the way military formations
they mentioned.
at the time.
Did I mention?
Yeah, I mean, okay, because they're bringing up the vision problem as a reason to justify that armor was more dangerous than wearing nothing.
It's like saying, at any moment, you could be bitten by a shark. Luckily, sharks mainly reside in water.
You're right. That's actually a closer equivalence, because you could be stuck up and hit from behind. Except when you actually in a unit formation, which was the most case for most battlefields.
But when combatants got really mixed in with one another, Braveheart style, a distinct possibility in any battle, a soldier in armor could...
So if it degenerated into a wild melee...
You get absolutely bushwhacked by someone just outside their limited field of vision.
Yeah, but you could also be hit from behind if you're not wearing armor as well. You can't see behind you, armor or not. And
if there is someone behind you...
And this, you could get absolutely bushwhacked by someone that you can't see. Question though, would you have higher chances of surviving that bushwhack if you were wearing armor or not? So clearly, the exchange of benefit and detriment is vastly in favor of armor because it worked. You could still be beaten to death. So if he just says armor was more dangerous than wearing nothing because there were blows that could actually get through the armor and still kill you, or if he goes down that way.
While a heavy...
If you don't wear armor, you can't get beaten to death, I guess.
A suit of plate armor would protect you.
Right.
For most stabbing and slashing damage, it could actually make it easier for your opponent to clobber you into the next world.
Whoa, hang on. Wearing armor could make it easier for your opponent to clobber you into the next world. That's the statement. Wow. How are they going to justify that? That's bafflingly wrong.
Someone tell Iron Man, if he takes off his armor, dude, he'll be so much more powerful. Not to stop him.
Easier for your opponent to clobber you to the next world. If you get so... We've already addressed the weight issue, and it's nowhere near as bad, and if the armor is just decent armor, how can it make it easier for someone to clobber you? Okay. Is he going to try and say, I don't know, vibrations can... This is wrong, but this is like bullcrap science, pseudoscience. People say a hit on an armor could make vibrations and reverberate, which knocks you off your center of balance or some bullcrap like that.
If the armor's vibrating, then your skull isn't vibrating.
You're right. You're absolutely right, Oz. Let's see what they say.
By increasing your chances of getting a concussion or...
Okay, so wearing armor can increase the chances of a concussion. He's saying wearing a helmet can increase the chances of getting a concussion.
Or internal bleeding after sustaining a massive blow.
Versus the head being completely caved in.
What? I wish we could get your reaction, Nathan. You're there having an aneurysm.
Why do athletes wear helmets when playing football or sport or whatever, and they're getting shoved to the ground?
This is amazingly dumb. This is like... This video is really bad. A statement like this, how could you... Because you don't even need to know a lot about medieval history to know this is so stupid.
It's just common logic.
I can't believe this.
I'm not letting my kids use bicycle helmets in the future.
God.
Never.
Vibrations, Oz.
So,
concussion.
Increase
concussion. And what else they say?
Chances of getting a concussion or internal bleeding after sustaining a
called a
massive...
hemorrhage.
Increase internal bleeding. Armor can... If any blow that strikes on the armor, the power of that blow will be reduced significantly because of the armor. That same blow hit against you to a person not wearing armor would likely be deadly in any... there's no other case in which it wouldn't be more deadly. The armor will reduce the damage you receive. You can get damage through armor, but the fact the armor was there, it will reduce the damage massively. There's no world in which it would increase the damage. That's what they're saying. It would increase concussion and internal bleeding.
Blow. Weapons like maces and hammers took advantage of the fact that steel could dent and cave into its wearer.
No.
I can testify to this, Shad. When I was a kid, I was hit many times in the skull with a hammer, and I'm fine. I wasn't wearing armor then.
So, no. They're using the logic that armor could cave into a wound and keep a wound open, therefore it made the wound worse. Imagine what that wound would have been like if the armor wasn't there at all. If that blow was strong enough to dent armor, you're not going to have a head if you received it without it. Without the armor I'm talking about. This logic is so stupid. I can't believe it. Their logic is that armor might cave in and keep a wound open, therefore making the wound worse. I'll repeat it. They're completely ignoring the reality of what that wound would be like from that same blow if they weren't wearing the armor at all.
I think a weapon, like maybe an arrow that hits hard enough or a ballista shot, that would keep the wound open more than the armor that it went through.
This is bafflingly stupid. Like, just logically, you don't need to know armor to know this is dumb. Who wrote this? I'm sorry. Look, Weird History, the YouTube channel. I'm not trying to attack you personally, but who just slow down and think about what you're saying here. It's like they had a premise, like this weird idea that, hey, it might be more dangerous wearing the armor, and they've just looked for any possible reason to justify it to get a clickbaity title, right? And they're willing to, it's like they're not actually thinking about the statements. They look for any vein of logic that has some weird through line, hey, dented armor could help keep a wound open, and then they don't complete the thought process to figure out what that really means, and they just go with and throw it out there and say, ha, you see, it could be more dangerous than wearing nothing.
Yeah, but the armor itself drastically increases the chance a wound won't be made
deadly, yeah,
by a massive amount.
Yeah, and seriously, as I mentioned before, the force that would have taken to dent the armor to keep a wound open, and therefore, all the reasons that they give, the power behind that strike would instantly kill the person if they weren't wearing that armor. It's so dumb.
Obviously, teeing off a foe's head with a heavy blunt weapon could still do plenty of damage,
yes,
even if they were wearing a helmet. But if swung with enough force, a hammer could actually damage a chest plate enough to break bones, cause internal bleeding, or...
Damage a chest plate enough to break bones. So you're saying that hammer strike wouldn't have broken the bones if the armor wasn't there?
It'd be completely fine if you were naked.
I can't believe it. He's saying, that they could damage the chest plate enough that'll cave in, and then it's really the chest plates that breaking your bone, not the hammer strike, and the bones wouldn't break if you weren't wearing the armor.
Yeah, this is why the Spartans and Beowulf both fought naked, because nothing could hit them.
No, we'll keep going.
Even stop someone's heart. The trick is having enough strength to make the blow count. But when you're talking about professional soldiers of the medieval era, that kind of strength wasn't all that All
right, the clip they're using, and I think that's from it's a dinner theatre show called Medieval Times or something like that. He's not being serious. Don't use it in a Knights are Strong clip thing. Anyway.
Unusual.
So hang on.
Soldiers of the medieval era, that kind of strength wasn't all that unusual.
The kind of strength to... hang on, I need a larger context here.
Damage, even if they were wearing a helmet. But if swung with enough force, a hammer could actually damage a chest plate enough to break bones.
A hammer could damage a chest plate enough. The statement is already just so dumb for the reasons we mentioned. That same hammer strike would break the bones vastly more if the chest plate wasn't there. But now he's going to go on to say that the strength required, like, first of all, it'd be really rare to cave in a breastplate with a one-handed warhammer. There's a great scene in fantasy book, but great scene. It's in Stormlight Archives book. It's Way of Kings, Words of Radiance. Is it Words of Radiance?
What's the scene exactly? Who's the character?
It's a flashback with Dalinar, and there's a scene where one character knocks down an opponent who's wearing a breastplate and uses a poleaxe to cave in the breastplate while the guy's on the ground. It's a good scene because
He's wearing shard plate though, isn't he?
no, it's normal steel armor. It's a good scene because with the ground, like stopping it, because if you get hit in the chest, your own movement will absorb away a lot of that force. But if there's something stopping you from moving behind, that sandwiches it, and you can. There's a higher chance of caving it in. But you need something with a lot of leverage, two-handed. So something like a poleaxe could do it, and that's a perfect situation to demonstrate when a breastplate could get caved in. But if they're standing up with a one-handed warhammer, unless the breastplate is made of like tin-plated dirt, right? You're not going to cave it in with a one-handed warhammer. It's just not going to. But they're going to justify and say medieval knights were commonly strong enough to do that. No. By the way, I should give credit to the line tin-plated dirt. It's from Orson Scott Card in his Pathfinder novel series. But there's a character talking about, I think it was his brother or someone dying, and he got hit through the chest plate. And it stood out to me because I was like, Mr. Card, are you getting this wrong? And then it came up as like, that shouldn't really be able to do that, but if it was made of, tin-plated dirt, and basically someone cheated and sold him crap armor, and I was like, such a good line, tin-plated dirt. I was like, I remember it, and I've used it multiple times in many different videos, but I should give credit. That's from Orson Scott Card, great author. And anyway, so listen, he's going to say knights could do that because they were just strong.
Cause internal bleeding, or even stop someone's heart. The trick is having enough strength to make the blow count.
So having enough strength meaning having enough strength to cave in armor, basically.
But when you're talking about professional soldiers of the medieval era, that kind of strength wasn't all that unusual.
So they're all just superhumans. They're athletes, all right, but if you compare modern day athlete to modern day athlete to medieval athlete, they're going to be they're not superhumans, but in actual fact, because of diet and other restrictions, they're a bit shorter than modern people as well. It's more likely that they wouldn't be stronger than modern people with better food, better medical technology, better training equipment and stuff. We do, again, of course, a medieval athlete would vastly outperform a regular person, especially in armor when they train for that armor and type of combat. But if you compare like to like.
But he also says that it was not uncommon for them to have the strength to break through tempered steel plate, yet, dude, their armor was too heavy for them to move around in for so long. It's too heavy.
There's contradictions in this one. Guns ended the era of the suit of armor. Well, that's just true. Wrong as a statement. They didn't. But let's see if he clarifies it.
By the 17th century, suits of armor were on the decline. While they remained common among the nobility, cuirassiers, during the European Wars of Religion, by the start of the 18th century, the once glorified suit of armor had basically been reduced to a chest plate.
Mostly correct. The breastplate's still around. So to say armor was phased out, that would be wrong. But at least he clarifies and says there were types of armor still in use.
Yeah, but that's the thing. We still wear armor to this day.
Yeah, we do.
And also, technically firearms in European conflict were invented in the 16th century, 1500s.
There were even types of firearms in the 14th century.
Well, there you go. So that's still a 300-year gap.
Yeah.
And then to the modern day, just changed different materials and techniques.
They were earlier more primitive, but gunpowder weaponry has been around since the medieval period. Yeah.
Why? Well, the short answer is Guns. The wide proliferation of flintlock muskets, which could easily penetrate armor at a great distance, eventually made plate armor all but obsolete.
Look, made plate armor all but obsolete. I think that's a fair enough statement.
There's a comment down below where someone mentions the term bulletproof comes from when blacksmiths would actually shoot their chest plates and put a dent in it.
Yeah, to proof.
Yeah.
This was there was a proofing test to show that this breastplate could resist a bullet, hence bulletproof. So yeah, like armor and gunfire coexisted in battle for a decent time, and technically, if you want to go, types of armor has existed even to the modern day. So
Napoleon's cavalry experimented with forms of chestplate armor, and it even made a brief but mostly ineffectual reappearance during the U.S. Civil War. Soldiers in World War II wore flak jackets.
okay, at least they show some examples of late armor.
Explosive weaponry, though they weren't typically effective against bullets fired from rifles and handguns. So what do you think? Would you have enjoyed being a knight in shining armor?
We think-
Let us...
Watch this video and find out.
Wow. All right. Weird history. This video was very poor. There was a lot of misinformation and errors in it. Like 90% of it, it seemed to me, like at least 89% was just utterly incorrect or out of context or spreading something. So, look, I want him to keep making videos. Hopefully he will improve and stuff. This isn't the first time, though, we've had to visit one of their videos. And I am reluctant to make reply videos, but Weird History has 3.57 million subscribers. So this isn't me punching down. I'm like...
And also, they're doing videos every single day, and from the looks of that, they're not really exactly experts.
This looks, I don't know, they found like a poorly researched internet article that they didn't even double check with basic Googling. Like, you know, a lot of this you could have fixed with the first result in a Google search.
Yeah.
There's more nuanced stuff, like you wouldn't find information on the actual significance of the longbow, and
But then there's just the logical ones of getting hit in the head.
unless you watch my videos, like and subscribe. Sorry.
Shad, when they say
Yeah, they're
hitting the head with the hammer can give you a concussion.
more than when they're like, that was bafflingly dumb. I don't like that's not Google search. That's just common sense, like logic. Just think about it. How could they say something so wrong and so blatantly dumb on the face of it? Like, again, I think they weren't qualifying or double checking these statements. They were just looking for any logic that could justify the premise of the video, and they wanted a clickbaity video.
You just think about that for 2 seconds and it
Yeah.
makes no sense.
Let's quickly read some of these comments. Let's see, like how, because I don't have I'm using my laptop. I don't have my like to dislike ratio on. I don't know what the dislikes. Last time I checked, I don't think it was great.
Check.
I don't think there was a lot of, hey, Modern History TV is here. Jason Kingsley. Love you, mate. I love it. He actually appears often in comment sections. Maybe he'll appear in this one. But he says, he's so nice and polite. He doesn't like to ruffle, but he would have watched this and just thought, oh, wow, there's a lot of things wrong here. But some interesting observations here. That is, I love you, Jason. That's his nice way of saying this is a dumpster fire. I look, maybe it's not, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Jason, but some interesting observations here, but very generalized and simplified. Yes, nice way to put it. I would go probably further than that. Shame many of the images are from TV and movies, which almost always get things very, very wrong indeed. Yeah. It's great to see Jason there.
So it's got 5,800 likes, 239 dislikes.
So it's not ratio. No, like that means their audience isn't aware a lot of these things. But I wonder if some of the commenters are. Oh look, there are several myths perpetuated by this. Several, there's a lot. First, while of course knights would expend more energy and armor, they had endurance training specifically. Yep, same point that we raised in the comment. I'm surprised by all left out the use of armor in World War One. Not too many people. There sounds like guns ended the era of suits of armor. Clearly, the 19th century bushranger Ned Kelly didn't receive that notification.
That's
Well,
that's the Australian one.
Technically, he held up for that one bout. But also, right, someone commented, so your point is that armor wasn't completely perfect and flawless, so therefore it was better to just wear nothing.
There's a smart person. Like, that's the logic, though. And it's ridiculous on the face of it. And I'm glad someone pointed it out. You got a lot of things wrong in this video. You are correct, sir. Check this comment out. I would love to see the reaction of the YouTube medieval experts of this video, like Scholar Gladiatoria, Metatron, and Shadowversity.
You got your wish?
You got your wish, sir. Yes.
Sorry, this comment has got me.
Okay, yeah, what's the comment?
What a crock of shit. So many myths in this video.
This is very true. So at the moment, Weird History does not get my endorsement or recommendation. This is the second video we've had to visit with him. It seems like one of those pop history channels. I've been accused of being a pop history channel, and look, I get things wrong, but one of the reasons that prompted me to start my medieval misconceptions things, like I said, was a video from Weird History, right? Because I was reluctant to dive into historical subjects, just informational historical subjects on the channel, because there's so much left I have to learn about it. And I wanted to really only touch on subjects where I felt my knowledge and research had really completed itself. And that would, look, but then I realized that would probably take a lifetime. And then I watched that video on castles, life in medieval castle from Weird History, and I realized, wow, I know enough to see that most of the stuff they said are absolutely wrong. And so even though I'm not perfect, I think I could do a much better job than what a lot of stuff that's being put out there. And that's what kicked off my Medieval Misconceptions series. And I'm still in that state. Like, I'm not perfect. I get things wrong, but at least I know enough to be able to correct a lot of this type of stuff. And I feel that makes a bit of a distinction between myself and these kind of pop history channels that it feels like they want content. They don't fact check, double check things, and they just spit it out there. And unfortunately, well, as I mentioned, I don't want it to stop, because hopefully this will just be a springboard to people finding my channel, other, channels that really like to go into the deep nuance, like Modern History TV, Metatron, Scholar Gladiatoria, and there's so many great ones. Sorry if I missed one of you guys, you're great. And gets the more complete picture and information on the subject. And so, anyway, I hope you've enjoyed, guys. Just wanted to clear up some of those mistakes. And I've already said it, like I feel mean when it feels like I'm attacking them, but they did get so much wrong. And so it's like, I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. Still glad you're making content. Hope you'll improve. Because medieval period is great, but they don't just cover the medieval period. So it does make me cautious about the other videos. Anyway, there we go, guys. Been a little while since we made a reply one, but it was fun. Thank you for joining. I hope you have enjoyed. And of course, hope to see you on the next video. So until that time, farewell.